The storm arrived faster than anyone expected. By the time Rowan Keller realized the narrow mountain road had turned into a sheet of ice, it was already too late. The tires of his old SUV slid helplessly, the wind howling through the pine trees like a warning from the mountains themselves. Snow slammed against the windshield so hard it looked like the sky itself had shattered. Rowan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his heart racing.
You're watching SK Stories, where powerful stories of kindness, courage, and second chances remind us that even a small act of compassion can change someone's life. If you believe kindness still matters, hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs it today, comment below, and subscribe to SK Stories for more inspiring stories.
Different. Rowan Keller was a quiet single father who worked long days repairing heating systems in small homes around town. Since his wife passed away 3 years earlier, his entire life revolved around Mira. Every extra job, every late night, every sacrifice had one simple purpose: giving his daughter a life that still felt warm, even after their loss. The woman driving behind him was the opposite of his quiet world, Alina Voss, a name that dominated business magazines and tech conferences. A powerful CEO known for building one of the fastest-growing renewable energy companies in the country. People described her as brilliant, ruthless, unstoppable. Rowan had only learned her name when they both stopped at a small roadside cafe halfway up the mountain. The cafe owner had nervously whispered it, Alina Voss, the billionaire CEO. She had sat alone near the window, typing quickly on her laptop. Her expression calm but distant, like someone used to being surrounded by people yet somehow completely alone. Rowan hadn't planned to talk to her. But when the cafe owner warned them that the mountain road might close soon due to an approaching storm, the two strangers ended up leaving at nearly the same time. That was how they both ended up trapped. Now Rowan's SUV had completely lost traction, forcing him to stop near an abandoned winter cabin hidden among the pine trees. The wind roared so violently that even stepping outside felt dangerous. Alina's sleek black car slid to a stop behind him. For a moment they both sat in silence, staring at the blizzard swallowing the road. Then Rowan noticed something: the cabin. It looked old but intact, and right now it was their only chance. Minutes later they forced the frozen door open and stepped inside, the wind slamming it shut behind them like the world outside had disappeared. The cabin smelled of dust and cold wood. No electricity, no signal, just silence and the violent storm outside. Rowan quickly searched the small space. There was an old fireplace, a wooden table, and 2 narrow beds covered in thick blankets. At least they had shelter. But the temperature inside was dropping fast. Rowan gathered old logs stacked near the fireplace and managed to light a fire. Slowly, the room began to warm. Alina sat quietly on one of the beds, rubbing her hands together. Up close, Rowan noticed something surprising. She didn't look like the powerful CEO people talked about. She looked tired. The kind of tired that had nothing to do with sleep. The storm outside grew worse. Snow pounded against the cabin walls and the wind howled like a living creature. Hours passed. With no signal and no way to drive through the storm, they had no choice but to wait. At first, the silence between them was thick. Rowan focused on feeding the fire. Alina stared at the flames. Two strangers from completely different worlds, trapped together by something neither could control. Eventually, exhaustion softened the tension. Rowan spoke first, mentioning his daughter Mira, who loved drawing snowmen and believed every mountain had a secret hidden inside it. Alina listened quietly. For the first time since he had met her, something in her expression shifted. She asked about Mira, what she liked, what made her laugh. Rowan realized something strange. Despite her confident reputation, Alina asked questions like someone who had rarely experienced those simple moments. Then Rowan asked about her life, her company, her success, the things people admired. For a long moment, she said nothing. The fire crackled. The storm raged outside. Finally, Alina leaned back slightly, staring at the ceiling as if remembering something far away. Her story surprised him. She hadn't grown up wealthy. Her father had worked in a factory that eventually shut down. Her mother had struggled to keep the family afloat. Alina had worked 3 jobs through college, driven by one belief that success meant never feeling powerless again. And she had succeeded. But somewhere along the way, her life had become something strange. Meetings, flights, endless expectations. Thousands of employees depending on her decisions. Yet almost no one who truly knew her. The warmth of the fire reflected in her eyes as she admitted something that sounded almost unbelievable coming from someone so powerful. She felt alone. Not the kind of loneliness caused by being physically alone. The deeper kind. The kind where no one sees the person behind the success. Rowan didn't try to offer advice. He simply listened. Outside, the storm grew even more violent, shaking the cabin windows. The fire dimmed slightly. Rowan added another log. Hours passed. The cold night stretched endlessly. Then something happened that neither of them expected. Alina quietly stood and walked toward the small window. She looked out at the storm swirling across the mountains. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely louder than a whisper. And that whisper changed everything. She said she envied Rowan, not his situation, not the struggles of being a single father, but something far more important, purpose. She explained that earlier that day she had been driving to finalize a business deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a deal that would make headlines across the industry. Yet when the storm forced her to stop at that small cafe, she had watched Rowan laughing with the owner while talking about his daughter. The moment had stayed in her mind, because it looked real, something she hadn't felt in years. Her whisper carried a quiet confession that seemed heavier than the storm outside. She said success had given her power, influence, and wealth, but it had also slowly taken something away, connection, moments that actually mattered. And sitting in that frozen cabin with a man who had far less than her on paper, she suddenly realized something terrifying. He looked happier than she felt. The words hung in the air like fragile glass. Rowan didn't laugh. He didn't judge. Instead, he told her something simple. Happiness wasn't about having fewer problems. It was about knowing why you kept fighting through them. For him, that reason had a name. Mira. Every exhausting day, every challenge, every sacrifice suddenly made sense when he saw his daughter smile. The fire flickered softly. The storm slowly began to weaken outside, and something inside that cabin shifted. For the first time in years, Alina Voss was not talking to someone who wanted something from her. Rowan didn't care about her company, her money, her status. He simply treated her like another human being trying to figure life out. The storm continued through the night, but the cabin no longer felt as cold. By morning, the wind had softened, and the snow finally stopped falling. Sunlight broke through the clouds, covering the mountains in bright white silence. Rowan stepped outside first, breathing the icy air. The road was still buried in snow, but rescue teams would likely arrive soon. Behind him, Alina stood quietly in the doorway. The mountains looked completely different in daylight. Calm, peaceful, as if the storm had never happened. But something had changed. Not in the mountains, in them. Before leaving, Alina turned to Rowan with a thoughtful expression. She told him something he never expected. That whisper from the night before had planted a question she could no longer ignore. What if success didn't have to mean losing the parts of life that made it meaningful? What if she could rebuild things differently? Weeks later, Rowan returned to his normal routine, fixing heaters, packing Mira's school lunches, and living the same humble life he always had. Then one afternoon, something surprising happened. A black car stopped outside his small home. Alina Voss stepped out, but this time, she wasn't there for business. She had made a decision after that storm. Her company would start investing heavily in small communities like Rowan's, not just profitable cities. Energy projects that would create jobs in places that companies usually ignored. And she wanted Rowan involved, not as an employee. As someone who understood the people those projects would help. The storm that had trapped them together had quietly changed 2 lives. Rowan still remained the same father Mira loved. Alina remained the powerful CEO the world respected. But now both of them carried something new, perspective. And sometimes the strongest storms don't destroy things. Sometimes they reveal what truly matters. Before the story ends, we would love to hear from you. Please share in the comments. What moment in life changed the way you see the world? And if this story touched your heart or reminded you of the true meaning of success, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing powerful stories like this, because sometimes the quietest whispers can change an entire life.